Further afield, the United States has warned that if war comes in the Korean Peninsula, North Korea would be utterly destroyed. Washington's envoy, Ambassador Nikki Haley, was addressing members of the UN Security Council during an emergency session after Pyongyang fired its 19th ballistic missile this year, the latest in a string of provocations in contravention of several Security Council resolutions. Now, the United States also issued a call on all member states to cut off all ties with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
She called the DPRK a growing threat after its latest intercontinental ballistic launch that placed the continental United States within range and called for drastic measures.
The continuing development of these missile systems demands that countries further isolate the Kim regime. So today, we call on all nations to cut off all ties with North Korea. In addition to fully implementing all UN sanctions, all countries should sever diplomatic relations with North Korea and limit military, scientific, technical, or commercial cooperation. They must also cut off trade with the regime by stopping all imports and exports and expel all North Korean workers.
Referring to the most impactful sanctions already imposed on any country in a generation, the US envoy called on China by name to show leadership and to cut off its crude oil supplies to North Korea. She also warned that the action by the DPRK had brought the world closer to war, and laid the blame firmly at the feet of the leadership in the DPRK.
We fought war with North Korea, and still today we do not seek it. If war does come, it will be because of continued acts of aggression like we witnessed yesterday. And if war comes, make no mistake, the North Korean regime will be utterly destroyed.
Cautioned that the prospect for a resolution to the crisis remained distant, but rejected any notion of a military solution.
For us, it is clear that there is no military solution to the problems on the Korean Peninsula. In the current conditions, we strongly call on all concerned parties to stop this spiral of tension, which seems to follow each cycle of reaction and then counter-reaction. It is essential to take a step back and carefully weigh the consequences of each move, to revise the policy of mutual threats and intimidation, because this policy only leads to consequences or goals that are opposite of those that are sought after.
Several council members called for the full implementation of the existing sanctions regime, while China gave little indication of its intentions.
The top priority is for all the parties concerned to keep restraint, implement comprehensively and strictly relevant Security Council resolutions, and strive for an early resumption of dialogue and negotiations. China always stands for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and for peace and stability on the peninsula.
The latest missile launch travelled to an altitude of almost 4,500 kilometres, more than 10 times the height of the International Space Station, in a 53-minute flight. Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.